The ocean depths, cold, dark, and anoxic in many cases, are not just vast bodies of water, but true submerged historical archives. For centuries, they have guarded the secrets of an era of intense early globalization, marked by imperial greed, the violence of privateering and conquest, and catastrophic shipwrecks. The era of corsairs and the imposing Spanish galleons, laden with fifth reel gold and silver, are not just the stuff of maritime folklore and pirate maps. They have become a tangible field of study for underwater archaeologists and explorers. Recent expeditions to hotspots from Florida's well-known Treasure Coast to the frigid expanses of the Baltic and the warm, strategic waters of the Caribbean and Central America have unearthed not only untold metallic riches, but historical narratives that challenge and rewrite the foundations of our knowledge about the transatlantic past. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. Let's begin. Exploring these submerged deposits is a scientific and logistical race against marine erosion, biological activity, and unfortunately looting. Each dive, assisted by state-of-the-art technology such as side-scan sonar and high-precision magnetometers, represents a direct leap into the past. The recovered artifacts are silent witnesses to naval battles, the unbridled ambition of European crowns and human suffering, especially of enslaved populations. These treasures transcend the mere accumulation of coins. They are time capsules that, when meticulously analyzed, reveal critical information about secret sea routes, the evolution of naval technology, living conditions on board, and, most crucially, the true scale and impact of slavery and colonization in geographies often considered secondary. Florida's Treasure Coast in the United States has established itself as the epicenter of the obsession with Spanish gold and silver. This coastal strip is the result of the convergence of powerful hurricanes that, in the 17th and 18th centuries, wiped out entire fleets, such as the famous fleet of 1715, which transported the wealth extracted from the viceroyalty of Peru and New Spain, now Mexico. Recent discoveries in these waters go beyond the concept of simply recovering ingots. Thousands of coins, mainly 8 real coins, the famous piece of 8, and gold doubloons minted in the mints of Potosi, Lima, and Mexico City have allowed historians to build accurate models of transit routes and quantify the exact volumes of colonial trade. This metallurgical analysis is vital to understanding the injection of precious metals that sustained the Habsburg economy and, by extension, the global economy. Along with the coins, the divers find objects from daily life and navigation: astrolabes, quadrants, majolica tableware, pipes, preserved food remains, and personal weaponry. These artifacts, scattered across the seabed, reconstruct the image of the opulence and endemic risk of the Spanish colonial enterprise. Each recovered piece of material acts as an archaeological confirmation of Spain's maritime hegemony, but also of the constant threat from English, French, and Dutch privateers and pirates, whose business model was based on the violent interception of these valuable fleets. Although popular imagination anchors the treasures of corsairs and shipwrecks in the Caribbean and the tropical Atlantic, discoveries in the Baltic Sea offer a fascinating historical counterpoint. The unique characteristics of this sea, its low temperatures and low salinity, make it an almost perfect natural preservative, preserving the remains of wood and the organic content of shipwrecks in an exceptional way. The most publicized discovery in this region has been the recovery of bottles of champagne and 18th-century beer, found in shipwrecks dating back more than 200 years. Surprisingly, some of these drinks, belonging to prestigious brands such as Veuve Clicquot, were still sealed and, after analysis, were perfectly drinkable. These shipwrecks, often linked to trade routes between Western Europe and the Tsar's court in Russia, although not directly associated with Spanish galleons, do belong to the era of privateering and smuggling that operated on a global scale. They emphasize that maritime wealth was not limited to precious metals, but included perishable and durable luxury goods that defined social status and were highly demanded by European elites. These findings reveal complex networks of illicit trade and smuggling that were often intertwined with the activities of privateers, who saw any high-value commodity, from spices to porcelain and fine liquors, as an opportunity for plunder. The Caribbean, known as the West Indies, was the main theater of operations for the struggle for global maritime supremacy. It was a melting pot of conflicts where colonial empires clashed directly and where privateering, a form of state-sponsored naval warfare, flourished. In strategic areas such as the Bahamas, the Dominican Republic, and the coasts of Cuba and Puerto Rico, divers continue to discover the remains of the famous crown privateers. These ships, like those used by Henry Morgan or Francis Drake, operated under a letter of marque, a legal document that authorized them to plunder vessels of rival powers. The recovered treasures are not limited to stolen coins and jewels, but include weaponry, cannons, muskets, cannonballs, ammunition, and structural remains that, through dendrochronology and design analysis, offer crucial clues about the shipbuilding techniques of the time and the military advantage that certain fleets managed to obtain. The interpretive value of these discoveries is to differentiate between the pure piracy, criminal looting without legal backing, and the coarse, looting protected by a letter of marque, an act of war sanctioned by a monarch. The meticulous study of cargo records, markings on coins, and documentation associated with sunken ships allows historians to redefine the figures of historical personalities, who have been alternately idealized as national heroes or demonized as villains, depending on each nation's historiographical viewpoint. Perhaps the most significant and transformative discovery in terms of restructuring the historical narrative comes from the Pacific and Caribbean coasts of Costa Rica. A country traditionally considered peripheral to the main route of the great treasure galleons has revealed a direct and dramatic link to the transatlantic slave trade through the discovery of remains of Danish slave ships. This discovery is of monumental importance and a powerful catalyst for historical justice in Central America. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. The irrefutable presence of slave ships from Denmark, a minor colonial power in the region, with possessions in the Antilles, on the Costa Rican coast, compels a profound re-evaluation of Central American colonial history. Traditional narratives have been monolithically focused on the impact of Spanish colonization. However, this finding documents the participation and complex interconnection of other European powers, such as Denmark, in the transatlantic slave trade system, a phenomenon that was much more geographically extensive than colonial written records and national historiography had recognized. The recovered artifacts are devastating. Remains of the ship, navigation instruments, and objects directly related to the enslaved people on board, such as shackles or restraints, as well as remains of provisions and goods that document the conditions of the voyage. This material evidence connects Costa Rica and potentially other Central American countries directly to the horror of the Middle Route. It demonstrates that Afro-descendant populations arrived on these shores in volumes and through diverse routes that official history, often for convenience or ignorance, had underestimated or completely ignored. The impact of this discovery extends far beyond geography and trade routes. It radically changes the historical narrative of the Afro-descendant presence in Central America. By providing irrefutable, datable material evidence that non-Spanish slave ships arrived in this area during the early colonial period, the findings rewrite the timelines and nature of the African diaspora in the region. It shows that the forced arrival of Africans to Costa Rica and its neighbors was a constant process through multiple international channels, rather than a late or sporadic phenomenon associated only with subsequent local trade. This provides a crucial material and archaeological basis for contemporary Afro-descendant communities, validating their historical roots, connecting them to a global network of forced trade, and allowing the reclamation of a history that had been deliberately or accidentally silenced. What unites these disparate findings, from the flow of Spanish gold in Florida to the champagne smuggling in the Baltic and slave ships in Costa Rica, is its powerful ability to compel a critical review of existing historical documents. Underwater divers and archaeologists act as the eyes of the present who, through material evidence, can validate, refute, or complement the chronicles and maps of the past. The meticulous cataloging of thousands of gold and silver coins allows historians and economists to calculate much more accurate trade volumes. By quantifying the true magnitude of the treasure that Spain extracted from its colonies, it is possible to understand more accurately the impact of that massive flow of precious metals on the global economy, the inflation it generated in Europe, the price revolution, and the financing of the vast wars of the Habsburgs and other powers. Non-monetary artifacts, ceramics, kitchen utensils, tools, personal items, remains of the ship's structure offer an intimate glimpse into life and technology in the 17th and 18th centuries. They reveal the quality of the craftsmanship, the tastes of the elites who traveled or awaited the goods, and the naval technology. Often these objects tell stories that official chronicles omitted, those of low-ranking sailors, those of the women who sometimes traveled, and crucially, those of the enslaved people on board. Humanizing the statistics of the trade, The discovery of Danish shipwrecks in Central America is the most powerful example of how underwater archaeology serves as a tool for justice and historical reparation. By providing tangible evidence of the slave trade in historically unexpected or denied places and times, it becomes a direct challenge to national narratives that seek to minimize or exclude the role of slavery in building their identity and economy. It is an unequivocal reminder that the history of transatlantic trade was a complex and brutal web that involved almost all of Europe's maritime powers, and that its impact was felt in every corner of the American continent, forging the contemporary social and economic fabric. The era of great underwater discoveries is far from over. With the continued evolution of sonar technology, high-resolution photogrammetry, and remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, archaeologists are gaining access to previously inaccessible and unexplored depths and regions. Each future expedition promises the recovery not only of valuable objects but also of more historical truths. The true treasure of the pirate era is not the glittering gold itself, but the information embedded in each artifact that rewrites history. These submerged discoveries force the world to confront the complexity, interconnectedness, and often the inherent brutality of the age of exploration and global conquest. They are a powerful testament that the sea, the great repository of humanity's memory, continues to return its secrets, forcing us to see our past with new eyes and to finally recognize the silent stories that lie at the bottom. The work of divers and archaeologists, in bringing these artifacts to light and subjecting them to rigorous scientific interpretation, is an act of historical recovery that has profound implications for the contemporary understanding of identity, early globalization, and the inescapable historical debt. Leave a like, subscribe, and share. Until next time.